Okay. In Parshas B'Shalach, there's a mitzvah. The pasuk says, "Al Yeitzei Ish Min Koimoi," that by Yom HaShvi on Shabbos one should not leave his place. In the Gemara, in the Torah Shebal Peh, there are two explanations Chazal give to this pasuk. The simple one would be referring to tchumen, that a person can't walk too far. A person cannot walk too far on Shabbos. There happens to be a debate, though, if tchumen is biblical in origin or rabbinic. There are three opinions in the Rishonim. Some believe 2,000 amos, leaving your place 2,000 amos, itself is biblical. Others believe the entire tchum is just d'Rabbanan, the entire tchum is rabbinic. Traveling hundreds of miles on Shabbos is only rabbinic. The standard opinion is that we differentiate. 2,000 amos is rabbinic, but if one would go 12 mil, 24,000 amos, which was the size of the Jewish camp, that would be biblical. Either way, this is not today's shir, but that's one angle of interpretation of the pasuk. A person should not leave his place, should not walk too far on Shabbos. However, the Gemara in Eruvin says there's something else we learn from the pasuk. Can't carry. Al Yeitzei Ish Min Koimoi, one should not leave his place. In the Sefer Torah, there's no nekudus. You could read Yeitzei as Yoitzi, don't take out. And Min Koimoi means don't take something away from its place. Don't pick up an item and take it outside, which would mean that a Jew naturally is sitting in his tent, which is a private domain. He has an item sitting on the floor in the private domain or on the table, but it's at rest. Al Yoitzi Ish Min Koimoi. We read it Al Yeitzei, but it could be read Yoitzi. There's no nekudus in the Sefer Torah. One should not carry an item out from its place on Shabbos. Fine. Which means when it comes to carrying, the first Mishnah Masechta Shabbos says, when it comes to carrying, in order to violate the malach of carrying, there are three elements that have to be combined together. One is the item has to be picked up from its resting place. It has to be relocated from inside to outside or vice versa, and it has to be replaced in the other domain. There's akira, lifting up, there's the transfer, and then there's the hanocha, the placing down. If the item was hovering somehow in your domain, it's not at rest. If you take it outside, you're not going to be chayiv because you're missing the uprooting. Because it says, Al Yoitzi Ish Min Koimoi, don't take the item from its place. It teaches me the item has to be at rest. You have to uproot it and relocate it to another domain and put it at rest over there. If one only does two out of the three parts, you will not have violated Shabbos biblically. And the first Mishnah Masechta Shabbos illustrates this with a story. It says that there's a wealthy man inside his house, and there's a oni outside the house. And the Mishnah discusses, imagine the oni picks up something from the outside. We don't know what it is yet, we'll see. He sticks his hand inside, and he places the item in the hand of the osher, the rich man. It's important, the terms poor and rich are important for today's shir. Maybe in life it's not, but for today's shir it is. If the oni picks up something outside, brings it in and places it in the hand of the rich man, the oni will have broken Shabbos. He did all three aspects. So too, if the wealthy man picks up something from his kitchen counter, puts his hand outside the window, and places it in the hand of the poor man, the rich man has also done all three components. He picked up the item from his kitchen, he stuck it out the window and placed it in the poor man's hand. In both of those cases, the perpetrator of the crime would be chayiv, and assuming they did it accidentally, by mistake, they would have to bring a korban chatas. Anytime a crime carries chorus, had it been violated intentionally, it carries a korban chatas if it's done by mistake. The Mishnah discusses that what if they don't do all three parts? What if the poor man lifts up an item outside in the street, sticks it in the house, but instead of placing it in the rich man's hand, the rich man takes it from him? Or let's say the usher, the wealthy man, picks up the item from his kitchen, sticks it out the window, but instead of putting it in the poor man's hand, the poor man takes it from him. And the poor man takes it, right? So the Mishnah says in these cases, no one did all three components. Rather, they're partners. They both partners in the crime. Okay, in each case, one person did 2 out of 3, the other person did 1/3, but they're still partners in the crime. It's only D'Rabbanan. Biblically, you only violate Shabbos if you do all three.
Yeah. That used to be with in Eastern Europe with the Choland, because you didn't have it. You had a communal. So
and you had to stand by a window to get your bowl.
First, no, you couldn't take it out of it, and you had to pick it up just outside. It was like a bench.
Okay, so if they would be taking those bowls outside the window to the street, that would be a big problem. That would be a live illustration of the first Mishnah Masechta Shabbos. So we come to a very intriguing debate, and this is going to lead us into an interesting discussion, okay? The Rishonim want to know, why does the Mishnah speak about a wealthy man and a poor man? And why is that integral to the story? The point is, you have someone inside, you have someone outside. So if you look at number one is a comment of Rabbeinu Yehonasan of Lunel. Rabbi Yonasan of Lunel lives in Lunel, in Provence, in southeast France. He was about the same age as the Rambam, and he was a big supporter of the Rambam. In fact, Rabbeinu Yonasan was a student of the Ravid, who argues on the Rambam. And we know the Ravid he wrote Hasagas, critique on the Rambam's work. Rabbeinu Yonasan was a student of the Ravid, yet he adored the Rambam so much, he wrote a work where he defended the Rambam from all of the critique of his own Rebbe, the Ravid. So he was like, he learned by the Ravid, but his adoration for the Rambam, well, he wrote a work against his own Rebbe. Why? But that's the way Torah works, There was actually a big debate by the grand students of the Vilna Gaon. There was a big debate between some of them. Do you have to take the Vilna Gaon's halachas to go, or you can debate with them and argue? So there were those that argued, and they came under big fire. How could you argue in the Vilna Gaon? His word is the word of God. What are you arguing? And they would respond on the contrary. We're doing to the Vilna Gaon exactly what he did to those before him. The Vilna Gaon said, when you study a topic, you put it under your own microscope, your own magnifying glass, and you study and you critique yourself. This is how the Vilna Gaon wanted us to learn. And if it means we have to argue, we have to argue. Anyhow, so that's Rabbeinu Yonasan. He was a student of the Ravid, but his adoration for the Rambam, and he was a big supporter of the Rambam. And so he wrote a sefer, a response to all of the critique of his own Rebbe. Now, number one, he says like this in his commentary to the Mishnah. What? No. It's we don't have the work. We don't have the work, so it doesn't have a name. It's just written in the old Sfarim that there was such a thing. You know why the Mishnah speaks about the poor man and the wealthy? Milsa agav urche kamashmon. The Mishnah is trying to teach me a chiddush. This wealthy man is doing tzedakah, right? The poor man outside doesn't have food. It's Shabbos afternoon. The guy's starving. He walks past the usher's house and he smells the cholent. He smells the flesh, the hot pastrami. So the usher Nebuchadnezzar, he takes a plate of the food, sticks his hand out the window, puts it in the poor man's hand. He's doing tzedakah. So it says Rabbi Yonasan, the Mishnah is teaching you that even though he's doing a mitzvah of tzedakah, but it's haba ba'aver, it came through a sin, and asura, it's forbidden. In other words, you might think that if you broke Shabbos in the course of doing a mitzvah, the mitzvah perhaps justifies. I was doing a mitzvah, come on, I have a break. Give me a break. No, we say it's a mitzvah haba ba'aver, it does not justify the crime, and therefore it's considered breaking Shabbos, and you have to bring a carbon. In fact, there's a whole shaila if the mitzvah is even a mitzvah. If the mitzvah is done by Aveira, what's the status of the mitzvah? So generally there's a big debate. Usually we say a mitzvah which is done through an Aveira, the mitzvah is out. There's a shaila if it's out biblically or only rabbinically. Okay, that's what Tosfos wants to say, maybe only rabbinically, others hold biblically it's out. But the vart of Rabbi Yonason is not so much whether the mitzvah is a mitzvah. The point of the Mishnah is the Aveira is an Aveira. You broke Shabbos. Justification tahin aher, very nice. But it doesn't justify breaking Shabbos. Maybe you should have invited the guy into your home.
Right. That's the moral.
That's Rabbi Yonason. Number 2, the Meiri. The Meiri who was about 100 years younger than Rabbi Yonason. He's also living in Provence, in Perpignan. That was the Meiri city. There was a shliach there, Nebuch Pevsner. He passed away not too long ago. You're a very young man. And before he passed away, he says, I want to be buried over here, in Perpignan. So he's buried there. And so Menachem Meiri, right, one of the great Rishonim. You might like this. One of the greatest controversies he became famous for is, we once had a shir about this, in the early 1300s, the Rashba, the Rosh, many rabbis in Spain got together to make a chayrim against learning philosophy, Arabic, Greek philosophy, generally secular studies. Medicine was excluded, and a couple other things were excluded, but they made a big chayrim against learning philosophy. And the Meiri, who was in Provence, writes to the Rashba that he's not pro the chayrim. There's so much good that can come out of it. So the Meiri became famous for that, for his stance in that issue. He also became famous.
Much younger, also. No?
The Meiri was about 14 years younger than the Rashba. So he's considered a couple years younger. He's the same age as the Rosh. The Rosh is born in 1250. He's born maybe a year earlier. The Meiri writes in his commentary on Avodah Zarah that Goyim today, in Goyim by us, which was Christian country, are not considered idol worshippers. The Meiri writes that Christians are not considered Oivdei Avodah Zarah, it's not considered idol worship, and therefore they don't have any of the halachas of idol worshippers. You're allowed to say hello to them, do business with them, fakert, a lost object, you should return to them, you got to help them. None of the dinim of that we apply to idol worshippers apply to Christians.
What was the rationale?
He didn't say. So you should know, it's been a major, some believe the Meiri had to write it because the Christians were looking over his works. And so there are many believe that this was forced. Others kind of know that the Meiri truly believed what he said. Why? Maybe in his part of town they looked at Yoshka more as a prophet. There are some Christians who do. Or it could be he believes that the Christians believe in a multifaceted God. And there's a debate if Goyim are Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem. You didn't have to believe that God is one. A Goy can believe in that God is numerous.
So the whole thing is watered down more and more. You don't have people today. A guy's a Christian in the street. He doesn't even understand the concept.
Yeah, but they always talk about Yoshka. Why do they talk about the Father? No, but they it's all Yoshka. Why when they swear, they say Yoshka, right? When they swear, they say Yoshka. When they daven maybe to the Father. I don't know. Who knows? The point is, there's lots of speculation what the Meiri's take on it, but the fact is, it was a big... anyhow, but the Meiri says in number 2, about the same Mishnah. Dvorim, we learn many things from the Mishnah. Achas, one of them is, Sha'afal pi sheyesh tzad mitzvah b'dover, even though the guy was doing a mitzvah of giving tzedakah, ein mitzvah b'makam avera, the mitzvah doesn't justify the sin. You can't do it. Afilu ba'averim divrei, even if it's only rabbinic. Because the Mishnah speaks about cases where the rich man doesn't do all 3 components, only 2 of them. He picks up the chalent, he puts it outside, the poor man takes it. So the rich man is only breaking Shabbos rabbinically. And we're saying, even though he's doing tzedakah, doesn't justify breaking Shabbos at all. That's the Meiri. So Rabbeinu Yonason learns like that, the Meiri, and the Bar Tanura, Rabbeinu Evadia of Bar Tanura, in his commentary, he's a chief commentator of Mishnayos, okay, the 1400s in Italy he lives. He was lucky that he has a respectful wine named after him. No, not so much Rashi and the Rambam and the Rif. I don't know how proud they are of the wines named after them. But Rabbeinu Evadia Bar Tanura, he's known as the Bar Tanura. And he, on his commentary on Mishnayos, writes the same thing as these Rishonim.
As what?
as the Rabbeinu Yonasan and the Meiri, that the Mishnah is telling you that even though the rich man is doing tzedakah, it doesn't justify breaking Shabbos. However,
one caveat. What if he's doing it to save his life?
they have to, then he has to. Then he has to give it to him. And he has to. Even if the guy refuses to take it. You can't watch a guy, you have to stuff it down his throat. Shoot it down. You take a slingshot and out the window you throw it down his throat. Here's the funny thing. If you look in the Rambam's commentary on the Mishnayos, I don't have it on the paper, but the Rambam writes his commentary on the Mishnayos. Right? The Rambam, the first work the Rambam wrote was his commentary on Mishnayos. When he was about 22, he writes it. He wrote it in Arabic. And the Rogachover said it literally enlightens your eyes when you read it. Although what we have today is only a translation into Hebrew. The as the Pirush HaMishnayos from Rambam is Meiri Esoinayim. And the Rambam writes, why does the Mishnah speak about a wealthy man and a poor man? The Rambam says it's only for convenience. Imagine to say the guy standing inside, the guy standing outside. Too many words. So we say the rich guy, he's the balabos. The honest, the guy outside. That's the only reason. What?
Reuven and Shimon?
The Mishnah never did.
He was a socialist.
So that the Rambam writes something very different. In fact, in number 3 is the Rambam in his halachas. You see, when the Rambam quotes the case of the Mishnah, there's no mention of the poor and the wealthy. He says in number 3, "Haya'oimed ba'achas mishtei rushuyas elu." If you're standing in either inside or outside, or pashut chaveira yodem rishus shniya, and your friend stuck his hand in from the other domain, v'not al chayfetz miyad zeh. I'm sorry, your friend stuck his hand in empty. V'not al chayfetz miyad zeh ha'omed b'rishus, and he took an item from the guy in this domain. V'chnisay etzloi. So one guy did the whole story. Or hoitzi chayfetz mei etzloi. V'niach b'yad zeh ha'omed. This would be the wealthy man. He removes an item from where he is and he places it by the other guy. So zeh ha'omed lo asa klum. One guy did nothing out of the 3. Because Chaveira either put it in his hand or took it from there, and the other guy, he did all 3, is Chayev. So the Rambam is discussing the case of the Mishnah, and he speaks about Chaveira, the guy in this domain, that domain.
It's complicated.
Right, yeah, exactly. You read the Rambam, it's a little confusing. It would be much better if you used Asher and Ani. The Rambam is out not to use the rich and the poor. In his Pirush HaMishnayos, he says that the Mishnah did it because of convenience, only that. And the Rambam, as if to make it very clear there's no tzedakah going on, he says this. In fact, if you look at Rashi on the Mishnah as well, Rashi says, when the poor man puts his hand through the window with something in his hand, Rashi says, you know what the poor man has? So Rashi says a chayfetz, it's just an item. The Bar Tanura says a basket, like Rabbi Shachar said. The Bar Tanura says the ani sticks in a basket. Why a basket? Because it's an empty basket trying to get something. Rashi says the ani didn't stick in a basket. It's an item. It's an item. So some want to say Rashi's learning like the Rambam. We're not talking about a case of stock over here. The Bar Tanura Taka, who learned like Rabbi Yonasan Meiri, says the ani sticking a basket. He's looking for something. He's looking for food. But Rashi's learning like the Rambam. There's no stock here. It's just 2 people. To give each person a tag, who's the guy in, who's the guy out, we mention Asher and Ani. But it's really just an exchange of items. No one's the wealthier, no one's the poorer. So there seems to be a debate between Rashi and the Rambam on one side versus Rabbi Yonasan, Meiri, and the Bar Tanura on the other. And the question is, what's this debate about? Okay? It's going to be interesting. The question actually becomes much bigger on Rabbi Yonasan, Meiri, and the Bar Tanura. Because there's an interesting halacha like this. If somebody on Shabbos, while he was doing a mitzvah, accidentally broke Shabbos. If, for example, back in the day they used to shake lulav on Shabbos, they used to ben shofar on Shabbos, before they forbade it. So if someone does pick up the shofar, the lulav, and he does accidentally walk outside and carry on Shabbos, is he chayev for breaking Shabbos? So it's a debate between Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua, Rabbi Akiva's teachers. Rabbi Eliezer says, yeah, you broke Shabbos, it doesn't, you were busy doing a mitzvah, too bad. Rabbi Yeshua says you're potter. Rabbi Yeshua and halacha follows. Rabbi Yeshua says no, you're called toya b'dvar mitzvah. If you were involved and engrossed in a mitzvah, and because of that you erred and you broke Shabbos, you're not held responsible. You are toya, you made a mistake while you're doing a mitzvah.
It's different than mitzvah.
Hold on. So this is it's a Mishnah Masechta Sukkah and a Masechta Shabbos. In Masechta Shabbos, it's talking about a moyel on Shabbos. If the moyel had two babies, there was a baby who the 8th day was Shabbos. There was another baby that needed a bris, but it wasn't the 8th day. If it's not the 8th day, doing the milah itself is breaking Shabbos. And accidentally, the moyel did the wrong baby. So we apply the idea, according to Rabbi Yeshua, listen, he was supposed to be doing a mitzvah, he made a mistake, you're not held responsible, no carbon. So in other words, like this, we have two similar ideas. If someone's doing a mitzvah at the time he does the Aveira, so sometimes we label it's a mitzvah that came through an Aveira, you get pinned. Other times we label it, no, it's the other way around. You've got to look at it like the Barditchever. It's not that, he was sinning and he happened to do a mitzvah. He's doing a mitzvah and he accidentally happened to sin. When do you apply one? When do you apply the other? So whenever the case is you're in the middle of a mitzvah and because of the mitzvah you accidentally broke Shabbos, you're considered a toya b'dvarim. You made a mistake. You're not held liable. Mitzvah abba ba'aveira is you have a stolen matzah and you eat it on. You're trying to be yaitz to the mitzvah.
No, it's stolen.
Let's say you know it's stolen.
Is it the accident that's what's making the difference?
Okay. Even if you don't know that it's stolen, the toos over there is only in the aveira of theft. You see, by mitzvah ba b'aveira, there's what's the status of the mitzvah, which we cancel out, and there's the fact you're pinned for the aveira. Toya b'dvar mitzvah is that you broke Shabbos while you were just involved in a mitzvah. There's actually no fulfillment of the mitzvah we're dealing with at that moment.
It doesn't affect the fulfillment of the mitzvah.
At the moment you did Aveira, you did Aveira.
Stolen matzah does. Stolen matzah, the whole...
No, okay, hold on. So let me just add a few details. Hopefully it won't confuse, we'll just clarify. We paskin like Rabbi Yeshua. If you make an error while you're doing the mitzvah, you're not held responsible, okay? There happens to be a big debate in the Amoraim that do you have to fulfill a mitzvah though? Do you have also had to have fulfilled the mitzvah in order to be off the hook? In other words, when it comes to the bris milah, for example, one baby is the 8th day. The other baby that you accidentally mauled, it wasn't the 8th day. The question is, was this baby meant to have a milah before Shabbos and today is the 9th day? Or the 8th day of the baby's on Sunday? If the 8th day of the baby's on Sunday, right, so then you broke Shabbos by you were supposed to be involved in a mitzvah, but you got the wrong kid, you did an Aveira, and you didn't actually do a mitzvah.
The kid's not shy from Milia?
It's too early. Whereas if the kid's 8th day was Friday, but for some reason didn't have a bris, so when you gave the bris to the wrong baby on Shabbos, you broke Shabbos because it's the 9th day for that kid. It's not, the Zman's not on Shabbos, you shouldn't be doing the bris. But you had an excuse because there was another baby, right? So you were involved in a mitzvah, you made a mistake and did the wrong kid, but your mistake did result in a mitzvah because the kid that you did was its 9th day. The fact is the milah works. So there's a major debate in the Amoraim when we apply this rule that if you're involved in a mitzvah and you make a mistake, it's okay. Do you actually have to have performed the mitzvah? Or the very fact you're involved in a mitzvah, although you did nothing accomplishing, is okay? Who do we paskin like between those two? It's a major debate what the Rambam holds. It happens to be a debate between the Merkeves HaMishnah, who's a big misnagid, and the Rameh Mipano, who's a big Kabbalist, in what the Rambam holds. The Merkeves HaMishnah believes that the Rambam holds, like Rabbeinu Chananel, that we're machmir, that you're only off the hook if you actually did accomplish a mitzvah. You can imagine that. Whereas the Rameh Mipano believes in a letter that the Rambam holds that even if you didn't actually do any mitzvah, but you were involved in a mitzvah and you made an error, so okay, right? Fine. Anyhow, let's get back to our thing over here. The problem is everybody asks, when this wealthy man is putting the food outside the window and giving it to the poor man, he's doing tzedakah. While he was doing tzedakah, he had inadvertently broke Shabbos. This should not be classified as a mitzvah coming through an aveira. This should be classified as toya bidvar mitzvah. Just the Mishnah says in Sukkah, if somebody on Sukkah got so excited about the lulav and accidentally carried it outside, he's off the hook. He's off the hook. Because he was involved in a mitzvah and he accidentally made a mistake. What would be the difference between that and here? He was involved in lulav and you accidentally carried outside, you're off the hook. So if you're involved in stock and accidentally carry outside, right? You're involved in stock, you accidentally carry outside, you should be off the hook. Everybody asked this question. Now you're probably wondering, by the way, why taka don't we blow shofar today on Shabbos or or shake lulav on Shabbos? Why don't we do it on Shabbos today? So Rabbah explains in the Gemara, because we're worried maybe you're going to carry it outside, you're going to forget and carry it and ask the rabbi how to shake the lulav. What's the big deal if you carry it outside? You're going to be a toya b'dvar mitzvah. What's the big deal? What's the big deal? Right, you hear the shaila?
Yeah, sure.
We paskin like Rabbi Shua, Rabbi Yossi, if you do carry a lulav outside on Shabbos accidentally because you were all engrossed in the mitzvah, you're actually off the hook. So why don't we do it on Shabbos? Because maybe you'll carry. No. And if you carry, you'll be potter anyways. So I've come across 3 different answers to that question. One of them is, well, according to the Merkeves HaMishnah and the Rambam, you're only off the hook if you actually end up doing a mitzvah. How do you know the guy's going to actually do the mitzvah right? What if he can't find the Rav that's going to teach him how to shake? You don't know, right? That's one option. Option number 2 is, and this is from Reb Chaim Oizer, the big Rav of Vilna before the Holocaust. Reb Chaim Oizer says, if you make a mistake while you're doing a mitzvah, you're off the hook from punishment. But the aveira is an aveira. So if you accidentally carried a lulav outside, you won't have to bring a carbon, but Shabbos was broken. So therefore, to prevent that from happening, we don't do it on Shabbos.
So if you accidentally carry a lulav outside, but then you come in contact with the
Well,
yid and he tells
today,
you, wait a second, and he tells you, listen, it's Shabbos, you can't, you're supposed to abandon it, put it down, or what?
So
Your responsibility
what happens on every Shabbos when you're walking in the street and you find out something in your pocket? You keep on moving. What you do is you try and find something called a mokum p'tur. You try and find a fire hydrant, something which has certain dimensions. That's right. You go back to where you came from.
It's better?
Yeah, because then the item wasn't relocated. You don't want to stop. If you come to a red light, by the way, there's a shaila. If you stop at a light, if your body stops and the item's in your pocket, so the item has come to rest. The shaila, if you stop at a red light, you're only stopping for a few seconds. Okay, here, Alton Road, you're waiting for 20 minutes. So here's a problem. But usually by red lights, when it's only 30 seconds or 60 seconds, there's a big debate, because the Gemara discusses, what if you stop just to reshuffle your backpack? Is that considered stopping, or are you still moving?
So what if you?
Okay, but these are good. These are good shilas. But let's move on. What? We got to move on.
What do you do? You walk in to the synagogue on Shabbos with the lulav. If you happen to realize it at the entrance, somebody tells you, "Listen,
go back home.
Moshe,
Bring it
it's
back
Shabbos."
home.
You still go back.
You don't want to bring it to the shul. According to some Rishonim, according to Taisus holds, if you pick up something in a private domain, you take it outside to a public domain, even if you don't stop there, and you go to another private domain elsewhere, you're going to be chayiv.
Right.
No, most hold not, because most hold if you start in the private, you end in the private, you'll be off the hook. But Taisus holds you chayiv. So if you're going to keep on going to the shul and stop there, you're going to be in trouble with Taisus. You're better off either going back to where you came from, or ask a guy to take it from you, or you put it down in the Rishus Hara, in the street on a certain, on something which has certain physical dimensions that would be okay. And we'll deal with that. Hello, okay. I'll tell you the dimensions later. Okay. Anyway, so this is the major question. So come,
This foundation are you saying there's no distinction? Mitzvah Baba, the idea of the Ta'ah, that they made a mistake, meaning one is B'shogig and one the guy's not.
No, Mitzvah Baba, I
think the Rambam uses the lashon l'shus.
Right. Yeah, that's it. Right.
Since there's a mitzvah, when he took it out, there was a certain rishus that he had to take it out.
Right. So by tzedakah as well, the rishus is that the guy there's a mitzvah of tzedakah.
So we have a question.
Right.
Not for regular mitzvah.
Nothing to do with that.
Not like stealing something and then putting it in.
Right.
There's enough surface. That's what it sounds like. There's one is that he's doing the mitzvah and he knows he's doing an avera. The other one, he made a mistake and did the avera.
Yeah.
But that's not a distinction.
No. Also. Okay. Let's just move weiter. There's comes number 4, the Chassam Sofer, and he says an incredible thing. The Chassam Sofer says, you have to picture the case over here. This poor man, right? How did he come to your window Shabbos afternoon? And he's there with a basket, right? According to the Bar Tanura and the Meiri and Rabbi Yonason, he's holding a basket asking for food, right? How did the basket make it to the window?
He was there a whole Shabbos.
It means this poor man is busy going around from house to house, right? He's going from house to house. He's carrying in the street. You know, it's like in Montreal, there were three Lubavitcher women sitting Shabbos afternoon discussing, ooh, I have a bocher that comes to my house every week, right? So one of them says, my bocher comes to me every Shabbos lunch. He comes right after davening, doesn't make us wait. He makes kiddush, he eats. He says, Divrei Torah is beautiful, is out quickly, is gewaldig. The other one says, my bocher doesn't come right away. He davens, he comes at 3 o'clock, and then he comes and he eats his chocolate. And the other one says, that's nothing. My guy, he comes at 5 o'clock, he comes, he chaps some dessert. And all of a sudden, all three of them look outside. There he is! Anyhow, this poor man is how did he get there?
What's the problem?
He's breaking Shabbos. If someone breaks Shabbos openly, there's no mitzvah to help the guy. There's no mitzvah of tzedakah. Says the Chassam Sofer, number 4, V'ulai yesh loimer al kol panim, this poor man that's leaving his house b'Shabbos, ukli b'yoda, he has his basket in his hand, u'mesavev al apsachim, is going from house to house, he kartiv lias muad u'mezid l'chal, he must be a regular, and he knows he's breaking Shabbos openly. The Balabais Taka made a mistake. The Balabais wanted to help the guy, accidentally broke Shabbos. So Balabal, he was bohul. The Balabais was overtaken. The Oni's outside, and he venitrad. He became occupied the midst of tzedakah, so he forgot Shabbos for a moment. But this poor man, this is his actions are predetermined, are calculated. He's going out of his home almanos lavakish on the psachim and is carrying a keli. It sounds like he's accustomed to Maharal Shabbos, at least rabbinically, right? Because maybe the street's only a Carmelis. And then he says, B'chlal, if this poor man breaks Shabbos every Shabbos carrying his basket, then the Mishnah would not say that if the poor man does all 3 components, he would be chayiv to bring a korban. You know who's chayiv to bring a korban? Someone who broke Shabbos mistakenly, and had he known it was Shabbos, he wouldn't have done it. It's called Shav Mi Yidiyasai. Had he known it was Shabbos, he wouldn't have done it. But someone who openly breaks it, then he actually doesn't bring. So we can't be talking about him. But he says, go down a few lines, Mikol Makom, we're talking, at least rabbinically, he's going out in the street. He hadn't, either he's in a real Rishus Harabim and he's carrying the basket 4 amos and putting it down. 4 amos, putting it down, you know. He found some loopholes. And so look at 5 lines from the bottom. Aval emes, this poor man, Einoi Hagun, is not a gleicher man. She's not a straight guy. There's no mitzvah to give him chayas. The Balabayas thinks he's doing tzedakah, but be'emes he did not do tzedakah because he gave it to someone who doesn't deserve it. It comes out he was busy doing a mitzvah but did not do a mitzvah, right? I told you the Misnagdim say, according to the Rambam, that the Rambam paskins that the to be off the hook, it's not enough to be involved in a mitzvah. You actually have to nail something on the head. And here, nothing was nailed on the head. That's the Chassam Sofer's take, okay? It's a balabatish look. You know, the Chassam Sofer was once speaking about his father-in-law, Rabbi Kiva Eger. And he said, my father-in-law, the Chassam Sofer, in his last marriage, he was 50. He married Rabbi Kiva Eger's daughter. And she hadn't met him till the chuppah, or something like that, close to the chuppah. And she told her father, Rabbi Kiva Eger,
didn't meet him till the chuppah.
Very close to the chuppah. She told her father that he's old. Father said, "No chaparan, he's not getting any younger." Chaparan. They got married. They had lots of kids.
Really?
Yeah, big family. Anyhow, so the Chassam Sofer was once speaking about his father-in-law. This the Misnagdim quote the story, so I'm just going to say it the way it is. The Chassam Sofer said, "My shver was very frum, so meticulous in halacha. He was so humble. He was so straight. He was such a masmid. He never stopped learning, and he praised and praised his shver. And people asked the Chassam Sofer, "There's one thing you're not talking about. Rabbi Akiva Eiger is known for his scholarship. His main thing we know him for is for his brilliance and his scholarship. And about that, you say nothing." So the Chassam Sofer said, "In scholarship, I think my path is greater than my shver's." That's what he said. Very strange. One of the Chassam Sofer's sons once said, "My father, the Chassam Sofer, was a humble man. My Zayd, Rabbi Akiva Eiger, never dawned on him that he has something to be proud about." It was a whole different level. Bechal never even... Anyhow, but the Chassam Sofer was known, to really get to the... The Chassam Sofer often does this, to really to illustrate and make practical the case in front of you, and then the question can kind of fall on the wayside. That's what the Chassam Sofer says. You know what the major problem with the Chassam Sofer is? According to him, the rich man didn't do a mitzvah. So what is the Rabbi Yonason and the Meiri and the Bartanura saying? They're saying that the chiddush of the Mishnah is, although the guy did a mitzvah of tzedakah, it's a mitzvah that came through an Aveira. According... No, that's what the Rabbi Yonason and the Meiri and the Bartanura said. The whole chiddush is you did a mitzvah of tzedakah, but you should know it doesn't justify the Aveira. The Chassam Sofer's shaila is, then you should call it Toya b'dvar mitzvah. Must be there's no mitzvah. If there's no mitzvah, then what are these Rishonim saying?
They hold like the Kabbalists.
No. Then there's going to be a problem, though.
The poor guy is
If they're going to hold like the Kabbalists, Ramem Yipanu, right, that you don't have to do a mitzvah, the guy should be off the hook. They taina that the guy is chayiv to be a carbon. Because the tzedakah doesn't justify it. Should! He was toya b'dvar mitzvah. The question's going to return. So here we go. And
Change the language.
not the language.
That's the reason why, because they didn't do the mitzvah. That's
Right,
why.
that's what they could say, but that's
Saying
not
the
mitzvah
language is
ba
not
baver.
good.
It's not just the language. According to this, Rabbi Yonason and the Meiri should say that we're telling you an usher and ani to teach you, even though the guy thinks he's doing a mitzvah, but because it's not a mitzvah, therefore he's chayiv. But had it been a mitzvah, he would be potter. That's if it's true that had it been a mitzvah, it's potter. They can't say the way they write it.
So silly question, but since you cannot bring a korban now, so what you go monetary?
When Mashiach comes, you're going to bring a carbon. That's right. You write it down in your diary. You don't have a diary? You've got to have a diary that has all of the... Like Rabbi Shmuel, he had a diary. So the answer to this is like this. It's beautiful. There's a very interesting discussion.
There's an app.
Certain mitzvahs you make brachas, certain mitzvahs you don't.
Yeah.
We had a shir once where we discussed why certain mitzvahs you say le, and certain mitzvahs you say al. But there's a much broader question. There are so many mitzvahs you don't make a bracha on at all. Giving tzedakah, you don't make a bracha. Honoring your parents, you don't make a bracha. Lending alone is a huge mitzvah. No bracha. And there's many other mitzvahs. So this question bothered people 1,000 years ago. The average Jew was wondering, what's going on over here? So one of the big Rishonim, he's known as the Baal HaEshkol, the author of the Eshkol. He was known as the Ravid. He lived in Narbonne, if I'm not mistaken. He was the father-in-law of the famous Ravid who critiques the Rambam. They're both called Ravid for different reasons. The father-in-law was Avram Av Bezdin. He was the Ravid, the Av Bezdin. His son-in-law was Avram Ben David. So they had the same acronym for different reasons. The Shver, Avram Av Bezdin, asked this question from Rabbi Yosef ibn Palat. Rabbi Yosef ibn Palat starts off his life in Algeria, and then he lives in North Africa. He travels everywhere. In fact, people trying to figure out his life journey. He was in Bovel, he was in France, he was all over the place. And the Ravid, the Baal HaEshkol, reaches out to Yosef ibn Palat and says, could you please explain to me what's going on over here? When do we make a bracha, when don't? And he wrote a letter. So the Ravid of Narbonne got hold of the letter, right? It was written to him. His son-in-law the famous Ravid who critiques the Rambam, right? He gets hold of this letter, and he's a big critiquer, and of course he critiques the letter. And he wrote lots of his own ideas about, I don't think that's the reason why you don't make a bracha here, I think it's for a different reason, etc. Okay? And there was debates and all types of, the Ravid himself said that he thinks that any mitzvah which is based on someone's misfortune doesn't carry a bracha. I have part of it quoted over here. For example, if you tear kriya, tearing kriya is a mitzvah. At least from Navi, it's a mitzvah. You don't make a bracha because it's best to have someone had to pass away. It's stalker, someone nebuch needs it, or leaving even the gifts to the poor, the corner of your field, the sheaves, the shikha, and things like that. Visiting bikur chaylim, right? Nichum avelim, right? All these mitzvahs. So kibud aveim, it's not that they ask you for a water, it's not a misfortune. You'd have to find a difference for it. But this is the Ravid. The Ravid, you can't say Baruch Asher Kedishanu V'Mitzvah V'Shivanu. Thank you for any. So that was like one of the Ravid's ideas. So any mitzvah which you can't bench. I mean, the Gemara says Ein Mevarchin Ala Puranos. You don't make a bracha on a. That's why when you read the curses in Parshas Kisava or B'Chukoisai, you don't stop in middle. You don't stop the aliyah in middle, and someone such a Nasan Lana Teresemis, and the next guy starts such a. But you don't make a bracha on a curse. It's one aliyah. And you start with some good psukim before, some good psukim after. You don't want to make a bracha on a piranus. Right, because the animal, that's shechionu. But yeah. So the question came to the Rashba, okay? This is a well-known letter of the Rashba. And the Rashba somebody asks, what's going on? Why some yes, some not? And the Rashba starts off, it's a deep question. It's not simple. Because you're going to have to go through every mitzvah, even if you make certain categories. There's going to be exceptions, and you have to custom make it here. It says Hamukah. And you should know many of the earlier rabbis have tried to explain. V'nistabchu by harbe, they've become there's lots of confusion. Why some yes, some not? And you should know it doesn't depend on one thing. I can't give you one rule, except a number of them. There are a number of general, for example, something which doesn't have an action. You don't make a bracha, to love Hashem, even if you know for sure you're going to feel it, because there's no maisa. Others believe you don't make a bracha on loving Hashem, because a mitzvah which you constantly have to do, you don't make a bracha is that now I have to perform a certain deed. The Sefer Chinuch says there are 6 continuous mitzvahs. One of them is loving Hashem, fearing Hashem. A mitzvah which is continuous, many Rishonim say, it's a pasnish, it's not make a bracha to do the mitzvah. That's when a mitzvah comes your way, and now you have the opportunity to fill it. Right. Okay, but Kibud Av might be if your parents aren't asking at something at a specific moment. Right, but Avas Hashem, the Abish was always asking. But the Rashba says, no, there's a different idea. Anything which has no action. Anything which has no action. Another one is
learning Torah is the Meiri.
Okay, that though might be a bracha min Torah, so it's different. The Torah says Kishem Hashem Ekra, you have to make a bracha. Here it's only when the Chachamim will mechayev, because also that bracha on Torah might not be a bracha on a mitzvah, might be a bracha to praise Hashem. So you have to praise Hashem every day, birchas hashevach, or it could be a birchas hanenin. You're enjoying Torah. In fact, some say that. Right, there's different types of brachas. Sometimes you praise the Eibishter. All the brachas we discussed last week, birchas haroya, you see the beautiful water, the mountains, praising Hashem. There's birchas hanenin, you're about to enjoy something, food, drink, even a nice smell. And then there's a bracha on a mitzvah. So some say, when you say the first part of birchas HaTorah, that's a bracha on the mitzvah of learning. Vaharev means to make sweet. That's when you're asking the Eibishter, it's a bracha on the geschmack of learning. Asher Bochabonu is a bracha on praise. So you actually have all three. The truth is, halachically, they're really two. Vaharev is considered a continuation of the first.
So it has its own bracha at the end.
Right, but it doesn't start with its own bracha. So, by the way, the Levusha asks, even if Vaharev is part of the first one, but you're still making 2 brachas. Why are you making 2 brachas? So the Levush says, the first bracha, it's a bracha achroina for the learning yesterday. So why didn't you make it last night before you go to sleep? The Levush says, when you're tossing and turning in bed, what are you thinking about? Well, you're thinking about learning probably, right? Until you fall asleep. So when are you going to make the bracha? until you fall asleep, you're thinking. So you have to wait till you wake up, and then your first one is a bracha achrona for the day. Yes. Anyway, let's get back over here. So another thing, this one pretty much everyone agrees. If you're doing an action which is not the completion of the mitzvah, like making a sukkah, the completion of the mitzvah is to sit in the sukkah, right? Or binding your lulav and esrog, right? Or even though chag sukkah is ta'aseh, right? Then it's out making the sukkah could mamish be a mitzvah. But the Alter Rebbe writes, making the sukkah is not the completion of the Rebbe's medayik and Alter Rebbe's words, that making the sukkah is not the completion, it's not the gemar. Okay, so the Rashba, though, in his letter, says the following. Read with me number 5. The Rashba says, Uminolan, how do I know? The whole mitzvah she'efshel l'mei akra, any mitzvah that could be uprooted, afal gav dahashta loy miyakra, even though now it's not uprooted, command the miyakra, it's like it's uprooted. Okay, sounds like a riddle. What that means is, any mitzvah which depends on other people, and it takes two to tango, you can only do it if they agree, and if they refuse, the mitzvah's gone. So even when they agree, it's a weak mitzvah. If the mitzvah's contingent depends on somebody else's agreement, and if they don't agree, the mitzvah's out, then even when they agree, it's circumstantial. A circumstantial mitzvah is not an absolute mitzvah. Kibud avim, your parents asked for the water, right? So you're about to give you Baruch Atah Hashem to honor my father and mother. Here's the water. They say no, they don't need it anymore. They don't need it anymore. You don't make a bracha.
Practically.
Oh no. Oh. So earlier in the tshuva, the Rashba said there's a practical thing. What if they say they don't want, and you're stuck there? It was like the Barditsheva was once doing shchita, and he made a bracha on the shchita, and he got in such a trance. By the time he finished the bracha, the animal ran away. It was gone. The Barditsheva, man sagt auf der Barditsheva. Hat gemacht der bracha, ist er gewann rein in Dweikes. Als er geendigt der bracha, hat der Behemoth schon entlaufen. And so that's more of a practical thing. Like, what, if you might end up with a bracha of Atala. Here the Rashba says more of a scholarly idea. Even if they will for sure go ahead and want the water, and they need the water, right? The fact that they could cancel, therefore, even if they agree, it's just circumstantial. And it's not an absolute mitzvah. Where does he get this from? You'll see his raya. The Tana'an Beperik Eilu Nairis, it's a Gemara in Ksuvas. If somebody, God forbid, rapes a girl, he has a mitzvah to marry her, if she agrees. Now you're wondering, why would she ever agree? So first of all, the rape doesn't have to mean there was a gun to her head. Rape, there's many, it can be much more delicate. Right, he convinced her, and he pressured her. Could be in other areas, he's not such a bad person. Also, what's she might be worried she won't get a shidduch with somebody else. The fact is, the Torah says if she wants, she could marry him and he can't refuse.
Unless he's Trump. Sorry.
So the Mishnah says sometimes the rapist is going to get a real raw end of the deal. What if this girl is a chigera? She can't. What if she's blind? Too bad. She's yours. She's yours for life. But the Mishnah says, what if Eina Ru'uya Lovila? What if he's actually forbidden to her? What if she's a mamzeres? It's a loy sasa for him to marry her. Einoi Rasha Lekaima. He's not allowed to be with her. The Torah says, V'loy Sili Isha, that the rapist should marry her. But that means Isha Ru'uya, a woman that he's allowed to be with. Not a mamzeres. So the Gemara asks, wait a second. V'neisi aseh v'nid chaloy sasa. The Gemara asks, if the rapist has a mitzvah saseh to marry the rapistee, the girl, so there's a loy saseh, she's a mamzeres. Okay, we have a rule. The aseh should push away the loy saseh. So Amalei, so the Amir responds, no. When do we say the aseh pushes a loy saseh? Like milah b'tsaras. Saras. If someone has saras on the place of his bris milah, it's a loy saseh to cut off saras. But if the kid needs a bris milah, the mitzvah pushes away the loy saseh. The loy efshe, the loy mekayim al aseh. You need to do the aseh, and if it comes at the cost of the lav, so be it. But here, why do they have to be married? She doesn't have to agree. Right? They don't have to break the license. Aval I armor, if she says loy be'ina loy, if she says I don't want this guy, there's no asay. That's what the Gemara says. You know how Rashi learns the Gemara? Rashi learns the Gemara that this woman, we convince, we pull her to the side and we tell her, listen here, you're a mamzeres. Truth is, she thinks she's struck gold because who else is she going to marry, right?
Yeah.
Who else is she going to marry? She thinks she's struck gold. But we convince her not to go ahead with it. The Mefarshim, according to Rashi, if she insists, we're going to let her marry him. We try and convince her not to go through with it in order that nothing should be broken. The asay won't have to happen because she doesn't need it, and the lois asay won't be violated. But if she persists, she'll taka marry him. The Rashba says, B'chlal, that's not the pshat. The Rashba says, since she could refuse, so even if she wants to go ahead with it, it's not an absolute mitzvah, it's a weak mitzvah. A weak mitzvah can't push away a lois asay. Kivon de efshel l'ma'akrala, since you're able to uproot the asay, if in theory she would not be interested to marry him. So afal gav da akati law, even though now it's not uprooted because she wants, it's command the lesser. It's not here. Doloi kvi, it's not absolute. It's not set in stone. Hoyel mishum hana dilah chai v'rachmana, since it's for her benefit, the Eibishter said he has to marry her. And since if she would say, I don't want this benefit, the mitzvah is gone. So therefore the Rashba learns, even if she insists to go ahead with it, it's not an absolute mitzvah. It doesn't have the power to push away the lois asay. And from him, v'garmina mina, we learn to fearing your parents, honoring your parents, standing in front of your Rebbe. Anything which depends on someone else, and they could be meichel, even if they insist on it, it's a weak mitzvah, you don't make a bracha. Hoyel, it's possible to uproot it to this asay, because the Rav could be meichel, etc. You don't make a bracha. This is the Rashba's famous rule. But the Rashba and Rashi disagree. Rashi learns that Gemara. Rashi holds, if she would insist to get married, it's a full-fledged asay, pushes away the lois asay. So what comes out is like this. According to Rashi, right, any mitzvah that the other party can forgive in middle, doesn't matter. If they want to go ahead with it, it has the full force of a mitzvah. And that's why if this girl wants to marry, we're going to let her get married, push away the lois asay. So therefore Rashi, when he's learning the Mishnah in the beginning of Masechta Shabbos, the rich man is giving the poor man the stuff out the window, right? He's doing the mitzvah of tzedakah. What if the poor man says, I don't want the cholent? Okay. But if he does take the cholent, it's a full-fledged mitzvah, and we're going to apply the rule, you were doing a mitzvah, accidentally you broke Shabbos, you're potter. That's why Rashi has to learn that the Mishnah is not talking about a case of tzedakah. What about the Rambam's take on it? Look in the Rambam in number. The Rambam is going to be together with Rashi. A well-known debate, the Rambam and the Ravid by marriage. So the Rambam says, Kol ha-mekadesh isha, number 7. Anyone that mekadesh a woman. Bein ayidei atzmai, whether himself, whether through a messenger, they need a bench before the kiddushin. Either you or your messenger. And afterwards you do the kiddushin. Kederech shemavarchin ba'ol mitzvahs. If you're by a chuppah, right, so now we do the kiddushin and the nisuin together. It used to be a year in between. It changed 700-800 years ago, whenever. And we do it all together, but we separate between the two, between reading the ksuva. We read the ksuva. Sometimes you wonder, why are we reading the ksuva? Someone's stumbling over the Aramaic for 10-15 minutes. It's to divide. It's just to make a division. So by the kiddushin, there's a bracha. It's right. There's a bracha that you make, and the Rambam says that bracha is a bracha on the mitzvah of kiddushin, which is the giving the ring to the woman. And the Rambam says you do it before. Now, we don't do that, but the Rambam do it before. And the Rambam says, V'im kiddush v'loy birich, if you gave the ring, it didn't make this bracha, you can't do it after the kiddushin, bracha v'atola. Mashanasik, it's too late. The Rambam says you make the bracha before. Look at the Ravid on the left-hand side. Amar Avram, says Avram, in the third line, Ein anu oimim kein, we don't say so. Elo, we say mekadosh v'achar kach mevorach. First you give the ring, then you make the bracha. You know why? V'atan, I'll tell you the reason. Giving the woman the ring, right? It takes two to tango. You need her to accept the ring, right? A woman could only be miskadeshes if she agrees. What if she pulls out? Im timashich isha. You ever buy a chuppah and the woman, the challah, pulls her hand away? No, it can happen. Imagine.
I saw a chassan do it.
What?
I saw the chassan bounce.
Yeah.
Really?
What?
Yeah.
It wasn't supposed to be so dramatic, but
All right.
it's a joke.
So you go.
Yeah.
Listen, anything can happen. So, what if the woman pulls back, right? She sees the ring and says, "That's the ring. That's the ring." Since she doesn't want the kabel, the bracha is levatala. So you're gonna make a bracha and then she leaves. What are you gonna do? So the Raiva therefore says, you make the bracha after.
Once there's confirmation.
Exactly. V'zeh hatam. That's why the birchas, the father makes a bracha lahachnisa bebrisa shel Avram, by a kid's bris. The father makes the bracha after the moil already started. Because what if the father makes a bracha and then the moil, I don't know, the hand starts shaking, can't do it. You got to wait. So the Raiva says clearly when it depends on somebody else, you do the bracha after.
Rambam says no.
The Rambam says you do the bracha before. Now it happens to be that most Rishonim hold the bracha of Ashalonos Arusos is b'chlal not a bracha on the mitzvah of Kiddushin. The Ramban, the Rosh hold, it's a bracha to praise Hashem. Most Rishonim disagree with this whole round. They say the bracha you do on the Asher Ashalonos Arusos, that's just a bracha to praise Hashem at this moment. Why don't you make a bracha? L'kadosh Isha. Why don't you make a bracha then? So the Rosh says, when you do an action which is not the culmination of the mitzvah, you don't make a bracha. Like when you make a sukkah, you don't make a bracha. Marriage? The mitzvah is to have kids. The marriage is just a segue into a later part. So the Rosh says, since the ikar mitzvah is to have kids, and b'chal, you can have kids even without getting married. You can have a concubine, right? The Rosh says. So you're not going to make a bracha on the kiddushin. The bracha asher asar lana, that's just to praise Hashem. The Rambam holds, no, clearly it's a bracha on the mitzvah. The Rambam holds you do it before. The Raiva says, you could do it before. What if she pulls out? What do you see from here? The Rambam is not concerned someone's going to pull away. If a woman's under the chuppah, it's possible, yeah. But you know what? In Torah, if you're concerned to every single thing, you would never cross the road. You can't do that. You have to rely on assumptions, especially a strong assumption. The Raiva says, no, you've got to be concerned. So the verse like this. In the world of the Rambam, the fact that someone might pull away, we don't even, which means the Rambam's going to agree with Rashi, who argues with the Rashba. According to the Rambam, the fact that somebody might pull away is not something that we contend with. And as long as they're in, the mitzvah has full force. So therefore, the Rambam as well, when he learns the first Mishnah in Masechta Shabbos, the Rambam is wondering, if this is taka, a rich and poor man, and he's giving tzedakah, right? He's actually giving tzedakah. The poor man could pull back. We're not worried for such a concern. It's a full-fledged mitzvah. So then, the rich man taka won't have to bring a carbon. He would be categorized as what? A toya b'dvar mitzvah. He was doing a mitzvah and he made an error. So therefore, the Rambam says there's no tzedakah. That's why in his comment in the Mishnayos he says the Tana just wanted to, for sake of brevity, Asher and Ani. And in the Rambam's halachas, he taka goes all out to make it confusing. This guy, that guy. He makes sure to say there's no tzedakah. Because if there was tzedakah, the halacha would be different. It would be categorized as someone doing a mitzvah made an error. And that's why the Rambam and Rashi are on that side. But Rabbeinu Yonason, the Meiri, the Bar Tanura all go with the Rashba. And derive it that Bechlal, the Yonason and Meiri, they're in Provence. The Raiva lives in Provence. Maybe they all hold the same way. That you have to be concerned someone might pull out. And that, like the Rashba says, weakens the mitzvah in its totality. It becomes a weak mitzvah. To the point it can't push away a loisasa. For the same token, so that if the rich man is giving tzedakah to the poor man on Shabbos, he's picking up the plate of hot pastrami and giving it out the window. He's doing a mitzvah. It's not an absolute mitzvah. Because the ani could pull away. Right? And these Rishonim hold, like the Rashba said, the moment someone could pull away, even if they're still in, it's a weak mitzvah. That type of weak mitzvah, we're not going to apply the rule that if you broke Shabbos, we'll give you. It's a weak mitzvah. And that's why they all say that's why you're still going to be chayiv, and that's the chiddush of the Mishnah. Although you did a mitzvah of tzedakah, this type of mitzvah will not exonerate you for breaking Shabbos. Now, who says this? The Maharal in number 6 says it's mefurish. Without quoting any things we said, the Maharal in his Sefer Gur Arya on Gemara. If you buy all the Maharal Sfarim, you actually don't get this Sefer. You should know it's there's whenever you buy all the Sfarim of someone, there's always something they don't sell. They want you back in the Sfarim store, right? They're always going to put. So the Maharal in the Gur Arya says We read it together and we'll finish. He says, Yeroy, it seems to me, number 6. Mashe nokad lishna oni oimed b'chutz. Why do we speak about a poor man? V'loy nokad, why don't we use lishna, just one guy outside? Why the poor man? L'rebusa, it's a chiddush. That afal gav da'arminon, even though usually we say, Im shogag b'mitzvah, if you erred while you're doing a mitzvah, you're potter, like we say in Shabbos and Masechta Pesachim, you made an error while you're doing a mitzvah. So the imtimer, so if you're going to ask, so the same thing over here. Hachi nami taka. If the guy's giving tzedakah, kiven the shoygig, the rich man forgot, he made a mistake, but he did a mitzvah, he should be potter. He says, shiny hasam, he can't compare it. Why? That's talking about a bris milah, lulav on Shabbos, oisa mitzvah loy talya b'mammon she'efsher she'yimchol ha'adam aleha. That rule is only by non-monetary cases. By absolute mitzvahs, you have to shake a lulav, you have to do the bris milah. So there we're going to say, same idea. So there we're going to say it's a full-fledged mitzvah. If you broke Shabbos, you're off the hook. Aval hacha, but here, if the ani doesn't want, ein kan mitzvah. It's pretty clear. If the ani doesn't want, there's no mitzvah. So therefore, even if he wants, it's a weak mitzvah. Lo yarminan bahamils. In this case, we're not going to say that if you made a that since you were doing a mitzvah and you erred on Shabbos, you should be potter. No, only by milah and lulav, which are not tali and mammon, that the guy could be meichel. They're absolute mitzvahs. So there we say you're doing an absolute mitzvah. You accidentally broke Shabbos. No. But not by a mitzvah which can just fall apart by the other party not wanting.
That wouldn't apply to the Ravid and the Rambam.
No. So the idea is, this is, the Maharal saying very clearly, if you want to say the vort of the Bar Tanuda, Rabbi Yonason, the Meiri, that we're talking about a real case of tzedakah, and we're going to hold the rich man liable for breaking Shabbos, why? Why don't we say he's toya b'dvar mitzvah? He was doing a mitzvah and he accidentally broke Shabbos. You have to say that stock is different than lulav and bris milah, which are the sources of that halacha. And he's saying exactly what we said before. Since the person totally in someone else's opinion, and that person could forgive, so even if he's in, it's a weak mitzvah. The Rashba used the idea of the weak mitzvah to the point he can't push away a loisasa. So we're just extrapolating and saying another thing. It's a weak mitzvah that we're not going to apply the rule. It doesn't justify, it's not powerful enough to justify breaking Shabbos. It's not an absolute mitzvah. It's similar to the Ravid who says you have to be concerned even by a chuppah the other person might pull out. And the Rambam holds we're never concerned to such a thing. And yeah, this is an explanation that my father gave many years ago to explain why is it in the Mishnah that Rashi and the Rambam are dafka on one side and the others on the other side, because Rashi and the Rambam show that their opinion is that we're not really concerned someone's going to pull out.
According to the Rambam, even if the ani doesn't want, you still have the mitzvah. He says you find ways to.
According to who?
The Rambam.
B'chal, okay.
So even if he doesn't want, you find a way to make him take it. So he would still say it's a mitzvah. That's why he has to say it's not tzedakah at all.
But there's other ways to.
He says you have to convince him.
Right. But what if the guy's adamant and leaves? By the way, you should know, I was always wondering about Kiddush Hashem. The Rikanti, Menachem Rikanti, the Rishon, he says, and others say that there's a bracha you make by Kiddush Hashem. If the guy is about to kill, you make a bracha. And I always wondered, what do you mean?
What's the bracha? The Kaddish.
Actually, the Kaddish Shmoy, let's al Kiddush Hashem. But the question is,
Get saved.
no, if it depends. Many Rishonim say the moment that it depends on somebody else, practically the other person, like the Ravid. According to the Ravid, you have to be worried the other guy's going to pull out.
It doesn't depend on him. It depends on the guy who's.
Right, the guy. No, but in other words, what if the guy decides to change? You know, it's like
was
it's like the Galach comes to the Rav comes to the Galach's house and the Galach puts treif of meat on the table. He tells the Rav, I heard if your life's in danger, you're allowed to eat treif. He says, yeah. The Galach takes out a gun. Eat the meat, right? And the Rav is about to stick it in his mouth. And the Galach says, he said, I was just testing you. The Rav said, you couldn't have waited a minute. In other words, maybe the guy is going to pull out. So I was thinking, the Rebbe Rashab said, if somebody was ready to be Moser Nefesh, he was there, and somehow circumstances changed and he survived, he has gone through a transformation. His identity is transformed forever. So maybe you make a bracha, something actually happens. And then I saw the Shalah, similar explanation. And the Shalah says, when you make that bracha ready to die, even if the guy doesn't kill you, you already sanctified Hashem's name. You already Mekadosh Shem Shemaim.
Say by Yom
Yeah.
Kippur.
Right, you don't have to die. We say klois hanefesh. David HaMelech says, kol nafshi, I've had klois hanefesh, but he was still alive. Klois hanefesh doesn't mean to die. Klois hanefesh means a very, very powerful yearning. It could lead to expiration, it doesn't have to. So to Kiddush Hashem, the Shalosh says you don't have to die. So if you make that bracha, has to show you Mekadosh, you're already Mekadosh Shem Shemayim.
As long as you mention it.
Right. The problem is, but there's no Maisa. The Rajba says there has to be an action. So for that, the Rebbe Rashab says that you've gone through an inner transformation. Maybe that's considered an action enough. Anyhow, okay, that is today's.
Thank you.
Thank God it didn't stop with you. There's always a question.